Thank you very much for staying with us on Frontline. We're moving on to an interview segment where we get to discuss issues of global importance and, of course, national importance. And today we're going to be looking at the situation with regards to security in the nation. Earlier in May, we had the Inspector General of Police that say that about 1,071 persons had been killed in crime-related cases across the country in the first quarter of 2019. And of course, criminal activities has made the nation quite unsafe, not just for its nationals, but even for foreign persons who have had to leave at one point or the other. Now, we've had several cases stemming from kidnapping to killing, maiming, and several other things you could possibly not want to think about. And joining me to discuss the state of insecurity in the nation today is a criminologist, Godspa Ujeni. It's good to have you join us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Now, on June 12th specifically, in his Democracy Day address, President Muhammadu Buhari did say that the criminal activities going on in the nation has got to do with some politicians and religious leaders, clerics, who he says are working at weakening the nation. Has linked the criminal activities in the nation to some politicians and clerics. And of course, it's generated the heat of discussions across board. What do you make of that statement?
Okay, once again, thank you for having me on the program. Yeah, the president is right on track. He is right. As were others that were there before him. Goodluck Jonathan said it. He knew it. Obasanjo said it. He knew it. And then the people that came after him are still saying the same thing. The president is right on track. Now, we know that the issue, it is very appalling, I've always said it, is very disheartening. The issue of security in Nigeria is trivialized. But it's wrong. It's not supposed to be so. As a matter of fact, this was one of the promises that President Buhari made during the build-up to his 2015 election that saw him as the president. Now, we know all these things. Even the children that are to come, they will still know that politicians, if my memory serves me right, was it not because of the complacency of our political leaders, our conventional politicians, that made the military administration to take place? Was it not because of those corrupt activities that made these people to take over the government, the reins of power? Now, everybody knows that politics in Nigeria has been criminalized. It's a kind of, everybody knows. You shouldn't keep telling us what we know already. You should tell us what we don't know. Every individual in this country knows that politics has taken over security issues in Nigeria, and politicians actually have their fair share of blame
in all of this.
So don't tell us what we know already. Tell us what we don't know and how you intend to tackle it. Okay.
By way of addressing some of the concerns you've raised about the president, stemming the rise of criminal activities in the nation, it says that his administration will build on the successes achieved so far, stating that when he assumed office in 2015, the high rise in insurgent attacks in the northeastern part of the country had been doused, and he would also deal with the situation of crime as it relates to this present time. But moving on, the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria does say that the security and welfare of the people shall by every means be a priority. Now, we've had, like you rightly mentioned, we've had this situation, not particular to this present administration. It dates back to the 1999 administration of Obasanjo. We had in different tides anyway, all through to 2009, when we had a major outburst by Boko Haram. And of course, it's been back to back, different forms arising on different bases. If I would ask you, How have the governments fared? Not just the Buhari administration, but way back 1999, those who have led at different times, how have they fared in regards to making the security and welfare of the people a priority as entrenched in the Constitution?
Every government knows that the fundamental priority of government should be the security of lives, the welfare of the people that it is leading. Every constitution places the people, the security of the people. As a matter of fact, it's not a today's thing. It didn't start today. Centuries back, the likes of Thomas Hobbes, in his book The Leviathan, he wrote about the state of nature. It suffices to say that Nigeria is tilting towards the state of nature, where life is not guaranteed. You leave your house and you wouldn't know what will happen to you. You wouldn't know when a bomb will go off on the street and then you are blown to pieces. You wouldn't know when the Fulani herdsmen will meet you on the way and you are butchered like a cow. You wouldn't know when phone theft is going to take your life. You wouldn't know. I think Nigeria has not fared well so far. And then it also bitters me the more if you take a look at the Nigerian concept, what they call security vote. It bitters me the more. Nigerians politicians appropriate to themselves security votes because they believe they have the sole responsibility of securing lives and properties. And these security votes, they are in billions of naira. Take a look at my state, for instance, Delta State. Per annum, Delta State takes up to 20 billion naira as security vote. They don't have a police that they control. Police is centralized. What do we do with the security vote? This is different from the national budget that had been, okay, let's take the past 10 years had been, you see, from 2018, Nigeria had a budget of about 2.2 trillion. And then we're talking about 20% of that budget went into security. Then in 2018, or rather in 2019, we are talking about 9.1 trillion. And if you take a look at the past 2 years, security budget had been dwindling. We're talking about 6-point-something%, 7-point-something%. Yet, we're talking about 9-point-something trillion. So, what are they doing with these things? What is happening in Nigeria? Nigeria is tilting towards the state of nature. They have not fared well so far.
Okay, corruption, greed, lack of vision, and several other things, lack of political will, lack of political conscience have been attributed to being causes of the level of insecurity that the nation has found itself. But I would ask you, how did we get to this point? Of course, you've said so much about the fact of not taking security, the safety of the lives of people and property seriously in the nation. But overall, I mean, we've tilted deeply into a state of security that's taking a downward toll on the nation's overall development. How did we get to this point?
Like I said, corruption had always been the problem of this country, and is not a today stuff. It didn't start today, and it's not going to end today. It had always been there. And the problem of this country, the problem with this country, had always been the lack of political will, the lack of decisiveness to tackle a thing to the core, to nip a thing to the bud. That had been the problem. Our leaders do not have the political wherewithal to tackle this thing called insecurity. Now, they trivialize everything. They play politics with lives, people's properties. In a situation where a governor is taking a security vote of up to 20 billion per year, the question is, what do you do with it? The police is funded. I am very much concerned about the amount that security gobs from the nation's coffers. I'm very much concerned about that. Yet nothing do we have to show for it. Corruption has been a bane of this country. And unfortunately, we have now started playing politics with security. And it's a very big doom to the image of this country. It's a big problem. Because, let me quote Hobbes again. He said that in a state of nature, there is no room for industry. Because you are not sure of the fruit of that industry. There is no room for entrepreneurship. So, the problem of corruption is now is trickling down. It's no longer a wee thing. It's no longer a thing that affects the political office holders alone. It's not trickling down. With corruption, security it has become a problem. And then with security being a problem, then we can no longer move forward. Economically and otherwise, we can't move forward. So the lack of decisiveness of the political class has been a problem.
Okay, you talk about lack of decisiveness. I'm going to take us through some of the comments made by different world leaders at some point they were faced with security challenges. But of course, we should also mention the fact that the president did say the security hiccups being faced by Nigeria isn't just peculiar to the nation. Even well-policed countries are going through some hard times, and they have gone through some hard times in previous times. But the question people have raised is, what strategies is the country putting in place, just as we've seen the other countries put up strategies that have nipped the bud of insecurity? And specifically looking at a comment made by former President of the United States of America, George Bush, in with regards to the 9/11 attack, he did say, and I quote him, "This is an act of war against the United States. Will hunt down the terrorists. They can run, but they cannot hide." Now moving on to London, where the former Prime Minister Tony Blair did speak with reference to the London bombing, and I quote him, "We'll track down the terrorists and we will bring them to justice." And on to Nigeria, where we had some attack during the administration of Goodluck Jonathan, specifically the UN bombing, the UN house bombing in Abuja. The former president said, and I quote, "Terrorism is a global phenomenon." It says maybe it is Nigeria's turn. I mean, the attitude was questioned, while we see several other leaders say we're decisive. Now you talk about lack of political decisiveness. We're decisive, we're going to hunt down terrorists. When we had the UN house bombing, the then president said maybe it is our turn. Now, reviewing this comment alongside the previous comment by these other leaders, would you say this attitude is also responsible for the laid-back nature we've turned or we've put up to addressing insecurity in Nigeria?
If you take a look at, while I was seated there, I was trying to review American budgets, their budgetary allocation to the Department of Defense. After the 9/11 attack, their budget went up. The budgetary allocation to their Department of Defense went up. And the truth is, when George Bush said it, he meant it. He did not only fight terrorism within the shores of the United States. They went as far as Iraq. They went as far as Afghanistan. He meant it. He took money from the coffers of the state, and then he made good use of the money. Accountably, it boils down to indecisiveness. Nigerian leaders, it's not peculiar to Goodluck Jonathan. If it happens today, Buhari will say the same thing. If it happened in the time of Obasanjo, he will say the same thing. This is telling you the kind of political culture that Nigerian leaders have. It is telling you how we treat issues, how we trivialize issues. We take things for granted. Worst of it all, we take security for granted. Somebody bombs, a bomb detonates. My friend's friend was a victim of Nyanya bombing. He left the house. He didn't know he was not going to come back. And till date, his remains were not found. You know how they knew that he was involved in that? His clothes, the clothes he wore when he was leaving the house. Then you see things like this. Have you seen where the Fulani herdsmen are killing people? They butcher you, they cut off the parts of your body like you are not a human being. And then you see these things, and then you tell me that you cannot be forced to act. Even if it is not within your powers to effect these statements that you are making, why not see to it that is effected? It is very wrong. The political culture in this country, it is very, very, very appalling. So it talks about what kind of, and then these people are not showing good examples. They lead by, you follow examples. Trust me, the coming generation might not be different, because the people we are seeing are the people we're going to follow. So the coming generation might not be different. And then in no sooner time, you see that the country collapses.
God forbid.
God forbid. So the earlier, the better. The earlier our political leaders start reshaping their political mindset and start understanding. Okay, I read in the news when the governor of Ondo State, His Excellency Akeredolu, he was giving an account of how his convoy was attacked, and his orderly was shivering. And then he said something, and I grabbed it. He said, when you are in the convoy, you are safe. How about millions of Nigerians that don't have convoys to go on? How about the farmers that rely on their farms to feed, and there is no security that if I go to farm today, I'm going to come back safe and sound? How about them? So our leaders are not helping matters. These political office holders are not helping issues at all. The earlier they turn around their political mindset, the better.
And we hope that happens in no distant time. But talk about the implications of their attacks. I mean, the effect they've had on the nation. Just recently, we had a report from the United Nations that foreign investments into the nation has dropped drastically. And of course, there is no gainsaying, though it might have some economic reasons. The insecurity in the nation also has a link to the fact that foreign investors are pulling out, and of course the investments dropping. But let me ask you, what are the implications of the situation if left as it is?
No, there's nobody that would want to go into a scenario where his life is not guaranteed. Nigeria is trailing directly behind the likes of Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. Nigeria is the fourth country in the world with the highest number of deaths to terrorism and insecurity. Directly behind Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. Now, when these statements are released, recently America warned its citizens not to go to some places in Nigeria. And we all know that these people are expatriates. They are investors. And when they are unable to come, when they don't invest, how do we progress? No country is an island. Nigerians invest in other countries as well. So we expect other people to invest in our country. But when their lives are not guaranteed, how will they come? So it's a chain reaction. When there is no security, there is no investment. When there is no investment, there is no economic growth. And when there is no economic growth, there is high rate of poverty. And high rate of poverty will definitely lead to desperations.
The conversation is still on the state of insecurity in Nigeria, and my guest is still Godspa Ujene. He is a criminologist. We'll take a very quick break. When we return, the conversation on the security situation in Nigeria will continue. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. The conversation is still on the state of security in Nigeria. And of course, we've talked a lot about, my guest has said a lot about the importance of our politicians and our leaders coming up with a political will, and the decisiveness needed to tackle this headlong. And earlier, I did mention the fact that the Inspector General of Police, Madam, did say in the first quarter of the year, about 1,071 people were killed in crime-related cases across the country. And of course, Nigeria currently stands as one of the countries in the world with the highest cases of kidnap for ransom in the world. And of course, it's taken its toll among countries that have cases of banditry and Fulani herdsmen attack, especially in Africa. But of course, in reviewing some of the seeming achievements of the security agency in curtailing the situation. The IGP, through the spokesperson of the police force, Frank Mbaz, said that between April and June this year, about 2,175 persons suspected to have been involved in this crime had been arrested. And of course, giving more details, 852 were arrested for kidnapping, 865 arrested for armed robbery, 359 for murder, and 99 for cultism. And of course, I mentioned that 63 kidnapped victims were rescued between April and June. And I would want to ask you, is this deserving of our accolades? I mean, bearing in mind that just recently we still had attacks of persons who, like you said, just went about their own businesses and never knew anything would happen to them. Is this the rollout of achievements by the police? I mean, is it deserving of any accolade?
Yeah, is in a way deserving of an accolade. But the truth is, Amnesty International released a report recently and said Nigeria, most recently, the number of deaths to the Fulani herdsmen, the banditries, the number of deaths is 6 times higher than what Boko Haram had claimed. 6 times higher. And this is a recent phenomenon. What if it elongates like Boko Haram has elongated? Who is safe in the country? Do you know, I was traveling in February this year. I went to the east. I traveled to the east. And then while I was coming back, we took a road that was very unusual. I never took that road for quite a long time. So we took a road very unusual. And then we were accosted by the police. They stopped us. And a guy, one of the passengers, my co-passengers, was carrying a laptop without a receipt. Now they held us. So immediately they held my vehicle. They acquitted somebody, one of the persons that they were holding before we arrived. they acquitted the person. And I was carrying my bag. The guy now went to the front trying to look for a vehicle because they stopped his vehicle. And then they asked the vehicle to leave and held him back. So they collected money from him. Immediately we came, they collected money from him and left him. So while the guy was standing waiting for a vehicle, I went to him. I said, bros, what did you do? The guy said he's not a Nigerian. I looked at him. Then I started asking, I started questioning. So how did they know that you're not a Nigerian? He could not provide even a single document, not an ATM card.
Not an identity card.
Not an ID card. And this was a period where Easterners were shouting that their lands had been invaded by foreigners from Cameroon in the disguise of Boko Haram. That they are going to come in, they are going to invade their region, and they are going to bomb them. They let this guy off the hook. And immediately they saw him talking to me, they asked him to move to the front and asked me to come back to my car. And you know, because of that, they let us go. And I started wondering, where are we going to? A foreigner, what if he is a bomber? What if he has come to perpetrate evil? There was not, you knew he was not a Nigerian. You knew he could not provide anything, but he still let him go. So he's in a way deserving of an accolade. You can give it to them, but owed to the number of deaths that had been lost this past few, Nigeria had never had it this high since after the Civil War. This past decade, since 2009 till date, Nigeria had never had it this worse. So the police should step up. They should be at the top of their game. It is not when you arrest 10 people, we have 100 persons that are perpetrating evil, and then you arrest 2, you're clapping for yourself. What about the rest? Where are they going to? So the police should step up. While I give it to them, they are doing their best, they should also step up. Because the casualties are increasing on a daily basis.
Because the government has to rise to its responsibility of protecting the people who in the first instance put them in the offices they hold. Now again, the president is admitted, and I mean, some have said it's a bold step by the president to admit that there are persistent security challenges, kidnappings, banditry in the nation. And I would want to ask you, would you say the president's, well again, is boldness in admitting, I mean, there's a place of admitting that something is going wrong and it helps you do the needful. Is this some form of a proactive step in the right order? Talk about the government rising up to its responsibility.
Let's not forget in a hurry that one of the reasons Goodluck Jonathan was removed from office was because people said that he was not a former military personnel. Buhari came on goodwill. They chanted the song that the issue of Boko Haram, and then he concurred to it. He concurred to what they were saying. The issue of Boko Haram was going to be nipped in the bud. The issue of insecurity was going to be tackled with vim and vigor. He said it. So, taking 4 years afterwards to come and give us a decisive action, or rather a decisive statement, because this is devoid of action. A decisive statement is not deserving. He came, people said, the pro-Buhari said he was a military general, he's a retired military general, therefore he knows the nook and crannies of insecurity in Nigeria. So he was going to tackle it with vim and vigor. Why has it taken him 4 years afterwards to do that? To give us a decisive statement. So I think Buhari needs to do more. The administration needs to do more, because this was what they voted for them for. They should do more.
Oh, he does have to do more. Now, one of the things that people have asked for and are still asking for is the creation of state police. And of course, we saw in the 8th Assembly, the Deputy Senate President Ikweremadu would of course sponsor the bill towards the creation of the state police. But earlier in the month, when the President received a report of the committee set up to look into the reform of SARS, it mentioned again that it was not in support of state police. But people believe that if this is made possible, we would probably be able to stem the rise in criminal activities. We would be able to stem them and possibly have a safe or a more safe nation. What's your opinion about the creation of state police, especially in relation to the attacks we see in these days?
I am in support of state policing.
Nigeria is ripe for it. Some say Nigeria isn't ripe for it.
There is never a better time for it. There is never the best time to do anything. Nigeria will not be 1,000,000 years old before we can start taking bold steps. You know, when things happen like this and then we compare Nigeria to America, and people say America is over 200 years old and Nigeria is just 50-something years old. What happens to a child who is supposed to walk at 5 and then at 4.5, 4.5 years, he is not crawling? What happens? You're supposed to walk at 5, but at 4.5, you are not crawling yet. And the law of nature states that you crawl before you walk. So Nigeria should not get as far as 100, as far as 200, as far as 1,000,000 before we start adopting things. We are good at transfusing. We are good at diffusing. We diffuse culture. We borrow almost everything. Why don't we borrow the good ones? At least. The issue of state policing is not a recent issue. And then it has been existing in other parts of the country, in other parts of the world. United States of America has the FBI, which is the federal aspect of police. They have the state police, and then they have the county policing. You cannot just tell me that these things happened when they got to 200. No, it's not a one-day thing. So let's start with state policing before we talk about county policing. Let's start with, I believe, with these things, and then by so doing, our governors will not be accounting for, because it's not just a one-way thing. It's going to help in a long way. In the long run, it's going to help. Our governors will now start accounting for the humongous security votes that they collect.
But some of the opinion or the fear that the state police, if created, could be abused. I mean, they would begin to serve the will of the governors. They would operate if it was created. Does this subsist for a reason not to have state police? I mean, in the bid to convince those who are relevant stakeholders in all of this.
Is the federal police not being abused? The power corrupts.
Absolute power corrupts.
Absolutely. So you don't tell me, you cannot totally remove the fact that when you have power, you're going to use it. And truly speaking, there is a thin line of difference between power and absolute power. There is a thin line of difference. Federal police is abused on daily basis. You know a policeman. If I slap you today, trust me, you're going to call that policeman on phone. That is abuse of power, abuse of privilege. So if the people at the federal level are taking advantage of the fact that police is centralized, let's allow the governors to take advantage. Even without the police, they still have advantages. So let's allow, you cannot use because of one to destroy plenty. Because of that concern that they are going to abuse the power, the powers they have already, they are abusing it. So let's add more to it.
Okay, just recently we had the governors of the southwestern region We recall that there have been attacks by alleged Fulani herdsmen on major roads linking the southwestern states of the country. And of course, a recent one happened on Wednesday when Samson Adenikwekun lost his life. Of course, to some alleged herdsmen who shot him in the head. And of course, the governors have risen up to the responsibilities. They had a meeting in Abuja chaired by the governor of Ondo State, Akeredolu, and they did say that they were going to be dealing with the situation by themselves. I mean, they were not going to wait for the government. The Osun State governor this morning, in a report this morning, was speaking to Boa Buratai, the chief of army staff, and telling him crime was on the increase in Osun State. And of course, it isn't just Osun State, spread across every other state of the country. Let's talk about the implication. We remember in Ekiti State at some point when Fayose was the governor, and the steps it took. He did say no, Fulani herdsmen were not going to have a say in a state, and it almost led to empowering people to defend themselves. But of course, the governors are saying they're going to be doing something related to protecting their own people, especially by themselves, for themselves. And of course, we've seen monarchs, also the different obas of different parts of the state in the southwestern region, say they're already employing services of UNTA. They're already employing services of vigilantes and several other security groups in their towns to deal with these people. They gave a mandate that they left their forest, and if they didn't, they were going to be doing something more drastic. Let's talk about the implication of a regional-based way, address or way of resolving this whole situation.
We know already that there is a mistrust among the different ethnic groups. Now, if that is why it is very important to legalize state policing. It's very important. Because if you don't, people are going to start taking laws into their hands. Fayose was almost prosecuted for arming the indigenes of Ekiti State. He was almost prosecuted. People called that he was trying to arm them, that he should be prosecuted and that he should be judged accordingly. Now, it's going to lead to, if you don't do this, a time will come where this mutual mistrust between and among ethnic groups in Nigeria will lead to chaos. You are a Fulani man, I am an Igbo man. Definitely I don't like you. It takes only, trust me, if you mingle with the commoners out there, especially when you get to the east, that is when you will understand the level of this mistrust among ethnic groups. There was a day I was putting on a cap, this Fulani small cap. Is it Fulani?
The skull cap that they wear.
Yeah, yes, this small cap. And I was in the east because I schooled in the east. And I was in the east. You know what they told me? They said, remove it. This particular area, we don't like anything Hausa. And then you go to the north, it's still the same thing. Once they shout, hey, it is the Igbos that they will look for. The Yorubas are now running. It's just like that. So if care is not taken, if you do not legalize state policing, there is going to be chaos because regions are going to start defending themselves by themselves. And by so doing, they are going to take laws into their hands. And when that time comes, there will be chaos everywhere. There will be a state of anomie.
And that's the last thing Nigeria needs at the moment. Now, finally, the president also stated that his administration will tackle the security challenges in the nation by charting a bold plan for transforming Nigeria. Very briefly, if you could speak to the president specifically what he needs to include in his bold plan, what would it be?
State policing. Yeah, I'm an advocate of state policing. Trust me, a lot is. It's even going to help our federal system. It's going to help. Federalism, true federalism, talks about the sharing of powers. But power is shared. Governors have the power to make laws, but they don't have the powers to implement the laws. So why should it be so? So Nigeria presently is not practicing true federalism. Rather, we're practicing quasi-federalism. So I would enjoin President Muhammadu Buhari to implement state policing.
Thank you very much, Godspa Ojane, for sharing your thoughts on improving the security of the nation. Now, Godspa Ojane is I'm correct.
Yes.
Is a criminologist, and of course said a lot about how we need to tackle the situation of insecurity in the nation. Now, it's a responsibility of government to do this, but of course we also ourselves have a responsibility of watching out for one another. It's the motto taking on the program today. Thank you very much for watching. We do hope that Nigeria becomes a more safe country for all to live in. I am Olajumoke Babalola. Do enjoy the rest of your day. God bless you.